Hey there, how's it going? Ryan Falkenrath here, Set the Pace Triathlon. I'm here answering your questions in the Ironman Training Chat Facebook group. And we are going from a question from Maza. Hopefully I said that right. Just starting to think about registering for 70.3 in December of 2021. Training for triathlons, but far from being a pro. How much triathlons do you recommend to do before the big day? So, at the time of this, we're in November of 2020, and you got December of 2021. So you got a good year. The number of triathlons just kind of depends. I mean, I'm going to assume that you're just starting out in triathlon, and if you want to do a 70.3, that's a pretty big undertaking. So here's what I would look for as far as the schedule goes. I think you want 6 months of solid training for your race for your 70.3. So 6 months out. So you're looking probably at the June, July, maybe March time frame that you want to be specifically training for that distance and that race in particular. So you want to give yourself that amount of time. So the 6 months before that, you got some good time to kind of build up a good solid base and foundation to get there. So I would, there's no set rule that says you have to do a triathlon every month, or a triathlon every 2 months, or that you even have to do one necessarily before you do your first 70.3. I would highly recommend you do at least one. I would consider at least one sprint distance triathlon just to kind of get your feet wet, literally and figuratively, just to make sure you got it squared away and you kind of know what to expect as far as the triathlon goes. And then second, try to get on Olympic distance at some point, get a little bit longer course. That's ideally at least 2 races, one sprint and one Olympic distance. In an ideal world, maybe do 1 or 2 sprints and maybe 2 Olympic distance triathlons. I highly recommend, the more experience you get in race conditions, the better off you'll be on race day. But once you get in that 6 months of race-specific training, you don't want to mix in too many races, because then you have to do a little bit of a taper and a little bit of recovery and then get back to your training plan. So it could kind of mess with the overall training. I'd say 3 months out from your 70.3, especially if that is your first one, I would kind of draw a line and not do any races at that time. For more advanced athletes, it's not as much of a problem, because maybe sometimes you consider a race as part of your training. But about 3 months out, I wouldn't schedule any significant races. In that 0 to 3 months of your race-specific plan, you could probably throw in an Olympic distance and kind of include that as part of your training, so it wouldn't be too big of a deal. I wouldn't call it an A race. I wouldn't go all out, because it'll affect the rest of your training. But that time before the 6 months, maybe once a month, try to find a race, maybe, once every 6 or 7 weeks, just to get that experience as you're doing your training, to get out there to do a race, to experience the anxiety of being at the start of the swim, being in the moment of being in transition in T1 and T2 and figuring everything out, where all your stuff needs to be, what all stuff you need, because I guarantee you that first race, you're going to get through it and you're going to have a laundry list of stuff of, gee, I wish I would have thought of this, I wish I would have brought that. No matter how much Googling you do, and if you have a coach or not, I guarantee you that first race is going to be an eye-opening experience on a plethora of many things that you would never even thought of on race day. And as coaches, I've done 15 half Ironman races, I've done 7 full Ironman races, and there's still something every race I come away with, and I was like, you know what, I need to remember to do that next race. So experience helps out tremendously. So that 6 months before your 6 month race specific training block, I would look at least 1 sprint, maybe 2, and maybe 1 or 2 Olympic distance, and then maybe 1 more Olympic distance in your 0 to 3 months before your race. And then the 3 to 6 months before the 3 to 6 months in your training block leading up to the race, those 3 months before the race, I wouldn't consider doing many races. So hopefully, Mazda, that answers your question as far as what I would recommend. Like I said, the summary is at least 1 sprint and 1 Olympic. Try not to do any races 3 months before your 70.3 race. And in there, maybe two sprints ideally, and maybe 2 Olympics. And just try to fit them into your planning depending on where you're at and as far as your training load. So hopefully that helps you out. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments, and happy training out there.